Today's goal is to meet with the development community, particularly the affordable housing development community in Fort Worth, and present to you our proposed 2022 affordable tax credit policy. And we want to get your feedback on the proposed policy so that we can report that feedback to council. So the proposed policy is going to council in early November, and we want to be sure that we hear your comments and your thoughts about it and report those to council. So your input on this really does matter to us, so know that it's important that you come here today and let us know how you feel about the policy. But before we get started on that process, I do want to introduce some of the city staff that you may work with on a day-to-day basis, and maybe you've seen their emails, or maybe you are dealing with them on another issue, but I think it's always good for everyone to know who each other are, okay? So I want to first introduce the neighborhood services staff that are here today. So Chad LaRoque is probably the person that you most deal with, and Chad is out today. So unfortunately, you don't get to meet Chad, but he's very tall. So that's how you can differentiate him. But some of Chad's staff are here. Leah White, do you want to say hi? She's behind the post, I think. Leah is. We have Leticia Rodriguez here. Where's Leticia? I don't see her. She might be by the door back there. Is Leticia here? She can say hi. We have Victoria Rambo Jackson here. Yes. We have Dawn McNulty here. Say hi, Dawn. Justin McLaughlin is here. And one of the most important people in neighborhood services is Victor Turner, our director. And he is here in the audience, and he doesn't like to be pointed out, but we'll ask him to raise his hand. And then he's not here, but a very important person to neighborhood services is Fernando Costa, our assistant city manager that oversees the work that we do. So we just want to send some kudos to him. And then we did ask for some of our other city staff to come, just so you can put a face to a name too, because we all know that you go through zoning processes, you may go through environmental issues, you also may be talking to community engagement. So we wanted to be sure to introduce some of those folks to you today. So we did ask the environmental team from Code to be here. So I wanted to ask if anybody from Code is here, because I'm not seeing anybody in the audience that I recognize. But Roger Grantham runs the EPA grant program in our code department. And just so you know, we've been working with them to develop a program where affordable housing developments who need phase 1 environmental reports or phase 2s can go to Roger and ask for a grant. That isn't automatic, but they've agreed to prioritize affordable housing development in the city. So if you're looking for some extra funding to cover phase 1, phase 2, some environmental reports, then Roger Grantham is the person to know in Code, and we can put you in touch with him if you call. We do have some stuff here from Development Services. So Daniel, do you want to say hi? So when you're needing zoning changes and when you need to talk to somebody about zoning, we want to make sure that you know that Development Services is also our partner, and they have also committed to help us move zoning applications and site plan applications through our processes. And so we definitely want you to know Daniel and Daniel's staff. Is anybody else here, Daniel, from Development Services? No? So Randy Hutchinson will play a role if you have an urban design that needs to get approved, but we just want to make sure we introduce that staff. And then we've asked community engagement to be here. Who do we have from community engagement? Hey, stand up and introduce yourself. Hey, Barry. I don't think I've ever met Barry in person, but we've emailed a lot. Yes, we have. So Barry is here, and we've invited them because, as you know, you have to reach out to community engagement to help you identify the neighborhoods that are impacted by your development and also help you get the word out to the neighborhood. So they're a very important partner of ours, and we want to make sure that you know who they are and that you use them when it comes time for your application. Also, we have today some economic development staff from the city. So we have Telemachus Evans and Martha Collins here from economic development. And just letting you know that they are in charge of all things economic development and community economic development, like tax increment financing districts, They are also working with, we're starting a Main Street program, an urban Main program in the city. And so you guys should be in contact if you're in an urban village or something like that. You may want to be in touch with economic development just to see if there's a role for affordable housing in that area. And then I saw Roger Grantham. Roger, hi, that's Roger. So we talked a little bit earlier about EPA potential grants, and Roger's here if you want to talk to him about anything like that. So thank you for coming. And then I also want to make sure you know that if you need to apply for neighborhood empowerment zones for further tax reductions and waiver of fees, that Sarah Odell in Neighborhood Services is the person to reach out to. Okay, so I know we do these policies and we talk just about the policy, but I know that it's a whole team of people that help you get across the finish line from the city, and we wanted to make sure that you knew who those folks were before we started. So today's agenda is to go over the policy principles. We're going to talk about 9% and then 4%, and then policies that apply to both different types of tax credits. We're going to talk about the notification requirements, and then take comments. I think we have a microphone to be passed around. We are recording this, so we'll be putting this up on the interwebs for other people to look at. And we definitely are also taking your notes and taking comments so that we can pass it on to council. So our tax credit policy principles are threefold, and we talked about this a little bit last year and the year before. Our council has changed in the last year, and so we have a lot of new members of council, but generally they are very supportive of mixed income housing. They would like to see market rate and also very low income in the same development project. So that is why a lot of our policy reads the way it reads, okay? So just know that that's been an issue that they have been consistent about. I will say that what I see them moving towards is really wanting a focus on very low income housing and making sure that all of our developments have 0 to 30% AMI. That is our big shortage in the city, and they're very committed to making sure that that can be met. So when you're proposing developments to us, make sure that you at least meet our minimums, and if you can exceed it, that's even better. Another policy principle is they really want to make sure that we're notifying all the government units, particularly the school district and any of the other governmental units that you'll be impacting and are required to do. So that's a big issue. We want to make sure that the applications come to us, but we want to make sure that you're making all those notifications. And then the other principle is neighborhood engagement, which is part of why we have our community engagement department here. This is a city of neighborhoods. They feel really strongly that neighborhoods should get a say in this process, and they very much want you to reach out to those neighborhoods. So that is something that is expected of you, and we'll talk a little bit about the policies that follow through on that. So specifically to 9% tax credits, our proposed requirements that we're proposing to council for this year, our resolutions of support will have 3 requirements. A minimum of 10% of the total units are at or above 80% AMI. So note that's a change from last year. We'll talk a little bit about that later. So 10% at or above 80% AMI. And that would be the market rate requirement. And a minimum 10% of the total units are 0 to 30% AMI, and the development is located in a TDHCA high opportunity area, mixed use growth center, city revitalization area, or a CNI neighborhood. So those are our definitive areas that we have for those. So note that that is a change. For resolutions of no objection, the geographic requirement is removed. There's only 2 requirements. One, that you have a minimum 10% at or above 80% AMI, and 10% 0 to 30 AMI, okay? So notice the change. If you want a resolution of support, you need to be in one of those geographically defined areas, and if you're okay with a resolution of no objection, then you don't have to have the geographic requirement. The next issue that we always come up against is the commitment of development funding. We do have a requirement that it is council's discretion. So council makes and decides who gets the funding and who doesn't. And As you all know, if you've been through that process, sometimes that happens at the end, but they have the full discretion on that. Resolution of support is required, so you need to meet all 3 of those requirements, including the geographic area. And we want to make sure that everybody knows this year that we're just providing a partial waiver of development fees with the commitment of development funding. We had a mix-up last year where some folks thought that we were giving full waiver of development fees, but we want to remind everybody that that 9% resolution and commitment of development funding is a partial waiver of the development fees. Okay. So the proposed 2022 policy changes relating to 9% tax credits are that we've changed that market rate requirement to be that households would earn at or above 80% AMI. The reason we changed it is because we got a lot of comments last year about the issue of income averaging, and also the issue of a lot of you are doing developments in census tracts or in market areas where the market rate rents aren't even close to 100% AMI. They may already be 80% or 60% AMI. So we felt that we would probably be better off just stating overall the market rate requirement will be at or above 80% AMI. That should allow you to do the income averaging to meet the goals of TDHCA and still meet what we would consider to be a market rate requirement. So we were thinking that everybody would stand up and clap for that particular change. Not hearing any, so no, not gonna clap, okay. We also removed the option for PSH units, and we maintained the requirement for 0 to 30 AMI units. The reason for that change is because we know that every year we don't have vouchers available for some reason. You know, I mean, it's just really, they're really hard, they're really tight, it's hard to get them. And so we knew that it was hard for you to do PSH units without vouchers. And so we just removed that option, but we are saying that we do want you to do 0 to 30 AMI units, okay? We did remove federally designated opportunity zones from the list of areas. We thought that was a great idea last year, but TDHCA didn't end up calling that one of your areas that you would get points for. So we thought, well, okay, we'll take that out. So that's the reason that's out this year. And then we wanted to definitely clarify that the commitment of development funding was limited to a partial waiver of development fees. And I believe the maximum is $2,500. So that's typically what our waiver is. So for 4% non-competitive tax credits, as you know, there's only a resolution of no objection that TDHCA requires. And so there's 2 requirements, again, 10% at 0 to 30 AMI and 10% at or greater than 80% AMI. And we do know that TDHCA, I believe the governor is still waiving the requirement for a resolution, but we don't know where that's landing. So we just really recommend that you go ahead and submit an application because that could end, it could change. The QAP may not look like it looks today. So we're just suggesting that in case something changes at the last minute, we don't want you to get caught. We would suggest that you go ahead and submit an application so that the city can do a public hearing. We did change the market rate requirement again here, and we've kind of already gone over that. We can still consider a waiver of that market rate requirement if you have a HAP contract or a LURA contract that is in conflict with that 80% at or greater than 80% AMI requirement. So we can do that, but we aren't going to waive it for the development's location in a severely distressed census tract. Okay, so still if you've got an existing restriction that doesn't allow you to meet the 80% AMI on a 4%, then we will go ahead and issue that waiver, but we can't waive it for the severely distressed census tract. So for all tax credit applications, this year we're reducing and proposing to reduce the requirement from 2 meetings to 1 meeting. So I think that will make everybody happy. We still would like you to record those meetings if you can and post them on the website. I think that's a really good practice to get into, just so if anybody has a question about it, then you can point back to the meeting and a recording. They are required to have the meeting this year prior to your application deadline, so we definitely want you to have the meetings early. And concerted revitalization plan letters will be provided only if TDHCA requires them. Right now in the draft QAP, they aren't there, but we don't know what's going to happen yet. So if that comes back in, we have the language that we can administer that. But if the QAP moves forward as written, then we won't be providing those, okay? Applicants are required to declare an intent to seek city or Housing Finance Corporation funds in your resolution application. And that's because the council members really want to know if you have a gap and if you're seeking funding from us. And they want to know that early on and not approve the resolution and then have you come back for funding. So we would really like for you to declare an intent to seek funding in your application, whether that's 9% or 4%. And then we did put together some recommendations on the policy by which our limited funds would be awarded to 4% and 9% tax credit developments. I believe on the 9%, it will go in the order of your scoring at TDHCA. So that's an easy way for us to figure out, you know, the points are going to go that way. And 4% will be evaluated at the time of application. So we know that that application period goes over time, so we'll just have to do it on a case-by-case basis for that. I wish it was that easy, as we could just rank order them, but it doesn't work that way. So, and then our notification requirements are very much the same as last year. So written notifications are required 45 days before the application is due. The council member has to be notified. That's a big one. Neighborhood services will get your application, but you should notify us, and community engagement, and Barry's here. They get swamped pretty easily, community engagement. So I just want to make sure that you know, be early with your notices. If you need help from community engagement, give them a week. Just be really, really understanding of the fact that this isn't their only job and they've got a lot of other things to do. You got to notify the superintendent of schools, and then the registered neighborhood, and I say registered, you can notify unregistered neighborhoods if you want, and I highly recommend that you do that. If community engagement tells you there's a neighborhood or an HOA in place, I would go ahead and notify them. Over notification is better than under notification, in my opinion. So one information session with registered associations by December 24th. So make Santa happy and get all your meetings with your neighborhoods in soon. Again, you only have to do one this time around if council passes it that way. We want to make sure that you get them in before the holidays, okay? And if you can do them in November, that's even better. So applications and policies will be at fortworthtexas.gov/neighborhoods, where all of our documentation will be. And our timeline is that we're going to ask you to submit any policy questions or comments by Friday at 5. So if you have any comments about that, and then we'll post the answers to the website by the 29th. Council's going to look at the policy. They're going to look at our notes from today and your comments from today, and they're going to then approve the policy with any amendments that they propose. November 17th is your deadline to submit your notifications, which is 45 days ahead of your submittal deadline. December 24th, you need to host your meetings before the holidays. December 31st is the deadline to submit applications to neighborhood services. We thought we would at least give you a nice New Year holiday. So, and then January and February we'll be issuing our recommendations at City Council work sessions, and then City Council consideration and approval of resolutions will happen in February. So very fast, and I can't believe how fast that time comes. It felt like last year was just around the corner. So, any questions that you guys have?
Regarding the information sessions, are those required to be in person, or are Zoom calls sufficient? And then is it one meeting for a particular, is it one association at a time? Let's say I have a project that has 3 neighborhood associations in the vicinity. Can I have one meeting and invite all 3? Or do I have to have one meeting per group? Thank you.
Well, it says an information session does not have to be held at a scheduled neighborhood association meeting and may include all applicable associations. So you could hold a joint meeting if you want to hold a joint meeting. Additionally, information sessions may be held in a virtual format due to social distancing and should be recorded to demonstrate proof.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the affordability requirements for the 4% deals. So the situation that we found ourselves in is that the Texas Bond Review Board is oversubscribed, will be for next year to a factor of 5 or 6x. And so effectively what that means is if you want to get a bond reservation and if you want to have any 4% transactions take place within the city, it's going to be effectively a requirement to be a priority 1 application in the lottery, which actually closes today for next year. And so what that means is that if this is the requirement, it's almost going to be impossible for any 4% transaction to get done in the city of Fort Worth. And that is because the requirements are as follows to be a priority 1. Priority 1A requires that 50% of your units are at 50% AMI and 50% of your units are at 60% AMI. So effectively an average income of 55%. The other option is to have 15% of your units at 30% AMI and the balance, the 85%, at 60% AMI. So effectively a 55.5%. Average. So if the requirement is going to be this in order to get a resolution of no objection, there is probably little to no chance that any 4% tax credit project will actually get a bond reservation.
Are they allowing income averaging?
So this policy, which is it's state statute for the bond lottery priorities, was done prior to income averaging being instituted by the IRS. So on my list of how do we fix this at the state level, that's at the top is changing these priorities to actually allow income averaging, but no. So it is 50 and 50, so 50 at 50, 50 at 60, or 15 at 30 and 85 at 60. So effectively, as drafted, there will be no 4% transactions in the city.
That's good to know. We'll have to take that into heavy consideration.
So to his point, but there are different priorities. So you can go under priority 2 and do an income average. My comment would be, because you have the 10% at 30%, and then you have the 10% market, you define a market of 80% or above, it conflicts, right? Because you can't
do both and meet one of the priorities.
Yeah, you can't do both. You can't have the 10% at 30 and then 10% market rate. And if you income average, you should consider doing, or you should have 70% and above be your market rate units. Because you mentioned in certain areas of the city, 70 and 80s are your market rate in certain census tracts.
Okay.
And so for HFC issuers, so subsequent 4, for HFC issuers, for the lottery for next year, which again closes today, there's already over $1 billion as priority 1, and there's only $600 million available in the entire sub-ceiling for HFCs. So if you're not a priority 1, it is mathematically impossible that you will ever get a reservation. It's a little bit different for PFC issuers, and we don't really know how that's going to shake out, but it's also probably your only shot would probably be being a priority 1. So it's a little concerning because this would effectively put a moratorium on 4% deals.
Okay.
And to stick on that, there is one other way to get a priority 1, which is having a census tract AMI, where the property is located be higher than the county, I believe, or municipal AMI. So you could achieve that and have the 10% at 30% requirement. But and the other part that I was going to say is you can do income averaging, but Treasury hasn't fixed their regulations one such that any investor would actually want to participate in an income averaging property. Even let's assume that that's fixed and we are allowed income averaging. The income averaging isn't allowed to have residents count towards property that are above that 80% AMI. So the prohibitive part in both of those scenarios is the 80% and above AMI populations, even if you kept the 30% AMI in place.
Got it.
So one other question is on your CRP. So right now, you mentioned that the QAP does not have where the city can provide the resolution to get the extra point for a development that's significantly contributing. However, they are providing preference to CRPs that are in QCTs over those that are in non-QCTs. But there have been comments submitted where if you are in a non-QCT, that you can receive parity with the QCT. So the way that you would do that, I think you should be aware of and should push for, is for cities to provide a resolution for non-QCT CRPs. And then the question too on notifications. So if you find a site outside of your 45-day notification deadline, or if the site gets under contract past that, what is it, November 17th? How, if we show the site control after that date, would you still be eligible to submit? Because if you find a site after November 17th in Fort Worth, that effectively says you can't submit for a resolution of support.
Yeah, that is our notification deadline, and that's been that same way for, I don't think we've changed that. I'm looking back at Leah, I don't think we've changed that since I've been here. It's always been 45 days ahead. We just need that, council members, not only just council members, but we've also run into issues with, your House of Representatives folks. People get their nose really out of joint if they feel like they weren't notified in a particular period of time. And so we just need to reinforce that notifications need to be 45 days in advance so that we can plan and we can make sure that everybody knows what's happening. But that's just for 9%. I mean, 4%, it's rolling, so.
For the 4%, they'd still have to give that advance notice as well, though, right?
They do, but it's 45 days on a rolling basis
Yeah.
when your application goes in, so, yeah. So I can't put a date to it. So really, the comment is really just 4% and 80% at or above. And so if we were to change our policy to more clearly reflect the QCT's requirements at 50 at 50, 50 at 60, 15 at 30, or 85 at 60, we feel like we would have a better shot at getting more 4% deals.
On the 9% side too, because what you do is create a gap with limited financing if you don't consider 70s and 80s at market and still have the 10% at 30%.
Yeah, we definitely need to take that feedback back to them. My sense is that the new council is really interested in seeing as many tax credits awarded in Fort Worth as possible. So if that means proposing a policy that gets us more tax credit wins, then we should try to do that.
And speaking of gap financing, could you mention on the 9% side, the funding that would be available would be based on scoring? What was it for 4% applications?
We're just going to have to take it on a case-by-case basis. Yeah. We'd like to create a program to help support awarded 9% tax credits, some gap financing if needed, but we know that there's a timing issue, right? Because you get these tax credits and then you have to close within a very short period of time, and there's almost not enough time to get the award to you and get it through council. So I'm trying to figure out how we would do that. Maybe it's based on, that early scores that come out in April or something like that, but those change, as you know, until you get to July, you just don't know. So we're trying to figure out how we can, I guess reward and help provide the gap to the developments that get the tax credits. But I'm not clear about how we can do that effectively in the really short timeline.
So with gap money, if you're not aware, TDHCA are they creating the ability in your 2020 allocations or prior to be able to get additional tax credits, but it's going to cost you in 2022 or something like that. So there are some real issues relative to construction, but back to the whole 80% and above sort of thing. I mean, that's always been a punisher of LIHTC deals because you lose that 10% basis and
Yeah.
you don't get any additional rent.
We get that.
And so if you were to be below the 80% and there wouldn't be a market requirement, then those folks that are risk adverse to do income averaging, that would at least give them the opportunity to do income averaging if it was 80% less. Or no, 79% or less or whatever. It couldn't be greater than 80.
That's good feedback. So if it was a range above 70 but below 80, and that would be considered market rate, that would still work if you were
80% or above kind of throws you out. And I don't know anybody that's doing income averaging with market rate units right now. So if you were 80% or less, then that still puts you in, quite frankly, the 100% affordable bucket. And then you could do income averaging and not have to worry about first unit available and yada, yada, yada.
Okay. That's good feedback.
Kind of piggyback on that, we have a 9% deal that our lender just forces us to drop all the 80% units to 60% to avoid this issue. So we have, it's all affordable, and we had 80%, but we had to actually drop into 60 because of hesitancy around income averaging with the IRS and the first unit available. So
That's interesting. And you're saying that's at a federal level because,
it has to do with the, first unit available and what the income would actually turn into. So we had to just drop all our 80s to 60.
okay. So the IRS wants to see your
Because it was
tax
gonna take
credit
maybe-
equity assigned to all the units.
Right.
They don't want
The
any
lender's
units
like,
without tax credit
We can't
equity.
go forward with this because there's,
Got it.
potential for massive issues.
Got it.
There's very few lenders who are doing income averaging in the state of Texas.
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of scratching my head because I came in from Wisconsin and we've been doing that for a while and it's really successful up there. So I'm a little shocked that it doesn't work here, but
Well, and I think it's the IRS has to release like this subsequent guidance and everyone's just sitting around waiting for them to get their act together and they haven't yet. And once they do, and because right now it's a cliff. And so it's like, if you mess up, there go all your credits basically. And so that's what we need them to fix.
okay.
And not to say Wisconsin's not doing it right, but Wisconsin's compliance department is not Texas.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? So I don't know.
Let's just say it's probably one of the most stringent.
Got it. We would really appreciate if you would submit an email to us with your comments. And we will put that in with our information when we go to council, because we are going to be presenting at a workshop. When's our workshop presentation, on the 2nd? Yeah, the 2nd of November, we'll be presenting. And so I think we're gonna take this issue of 80% AMI back to them and see if we can get some movement on that. So we're gonna have to formulate it, but if I could have an email from every developer in this room stating that you support that and here's the impact you think it would have, that would help a lot from us.
If you can send it to the email where you received the EVITE, the HTC at fortworthtexas.gov, that would really be helpful. That will make sure that more than one set of eyes will get to see that and make sure it's considered.
Yeah, we don't have it up here. Yeah, HTC@fortworthtexas.gov. Send us a note, say you've looked at our policy, this is what you recommend, here's your feedback. That would help us sort of move the needle on the fact that the development community really wants to get tax credits and we want to support them in that effort. So everything else okay? Thumbs up, just not 80%. Okay. Here, I thought you guys were going to be really happy because we bumped it down. Last year it was 80 and above, right? And now we're saying at or, okay. So we will, we'll take note. Any other comments? If not, we'll let you go.